Hi everyone, welcome back. It's Moa aka Swedish Whiskey Girl, and today I'm gonna try some samples from a really interesting new Swedish distillery. Och såklart, innan vi börjar så vill jag säga ett stort tack till Christian och alla andra i teamet på både Agitator Whisky och Blind Seal. Mitt hjärta slår såklart lite extra hårt för svensk och skandinavisk whisky, så det är så otroligt spännande att prova dem här idag. Och jag ser såklart fram emot att följa er resa över de kommande månaderna tills vi såklart får se en produkt på marknaden. Så tack så jättemycket! I am of course so excited to try these samples that the team at Agitator, or Agitator I guess in English, sounds a bit weird, but this is a new distillery in a place called Arboga in Sweden, which is kind of mid-Sweden, about an hour away from Stockholm. It's actually about just over half an hour away from where my parents live, so I will definitely see if I might be able to visit a distillery one day. They don't have a finished product yet, but I'm of course super curious to see what these samples are like that are around 18 and 19 months old, to see a little preview of what's to come. So I've heard of this distillery before, but it wasn't until I watched an interview with Whiskeykalendern. That is a great platform to check out if you're curious about what's going on in Sweden when it comes to whiskey events and interviews, and yeah, just check that out if you're Swedish. If you're not Swedish, of course, as well, but I know some of the interviews are in Swedish, so it might help to know the language. But they did an interview with the team at Agitator, and it was very fascinating. And what really caught my interest is that it was quite nerdy and a little bit quirky. And I mean, if you watched the channel before, you know how much I love that. And of course, don't understand me wrong, I love classic and traditional, but I think there's definitely room on the market for a little bit more innovative and maybe a little bit more experimental and different. Especially if you're making whiskey in a country like Sweden where you don't have a lot of rules and regulations. And I know what Agitator is trying to focus on is just flavour. And they of course have the freedom to do things differently. And I know for one thing they do vacuum distillation, which basically it's a different way of extracting flavours. It minimises the risk of burning your malt or kind of overboiling it in a way, and it also means that they can use less energy. So it's more energy friendly in a way, and I do know that they are looking to have a focus on trying to reduce their carbon footprint, which is of course great. And other things that makes them a little bit different is that they have a double set of stills and that are all a different shape. The stills are from Italy, and yeah, I think they are trying to make lots of different styles of whiskey, so it's really beneficial to be able to have two sets of stills where you can either mix the spirits from both stills or use specific ones. And I know some of the samples that I have are some from one set of stills and some are mixed. They also use casks that have been enhanced. I think that's how you say it in English. It's a bit confusing for me because I've learned about whiskey originally in English, so that's how I know how to talk about it, and then I am still learning a little bit to talk about it in Swedish as well, because there's some words that are very technical terms that are quite difficult to know in both languages, but translating it sometimes make it a little bit tricky. But I think it's also called in Scotland that you're enhancing casks, which you can't do here, but you of course can do in Sweden, which is when you basically add staves to the cask, and then you can use different types of wood, for example, if you want to get a maturation where you want an influence of, for example, American white oak, but you also want a little bit of a touch of a different kind of oak or even a different type of wood, then you can add them to the same cask and see how the flavours turn out that way. And I believe they're also trying different types of grain, for example wheat and rye and oats. And oat is one that I'm quite curious about, because I know there's some distillers in Scotland experimenting with making oat whiskey, and it used to be quite popular in Scotland, but then there was a different way of taxing it, so it became more efficient to use barley instead. And of course, amongst the samples that I'm going to try today, there is both one that is their house malt, which I believe is their unpeated style, which is made with a mixture of spirit from both stills. It is a 46% ABV, and it is distilled in 2018, and it's 18 months old. And next we're going to try a sample from Blind Seal Whiskey, which is kind of a sister company to Agitator, where it's basically, I think, a childhood friend called Tobias, who knows the, I don't know if his title is Master Distiller perhaps, but Oscar Bruno, who is one of the guys who works in the team at Agitator, and he wanted to try and see if they could run a rye spirit through the stills, which they of course could. And they decided to make this Blind Seal Whiskey, which will be out in the markets, I believe, in spring 2022. And I believe it's 66% of the grain in this is rye, and the rest is your barley malt. And the rye is from Finland, and the barley, I believe, is from Sweden, from a place called Halmstad, and it's from Viking malt or Viking malt, depending what language you want to use. And yeah, it's very fascinating. This one was distilled in 2019. This is a 53%, and it's an interesting one because it's, of course, there are some other distilleries in Sweden that are using rye, and this is started as a way to kind of make a Swedish version of American straight rye. It's currently maturing on American white oak, and I believe they're using something called wave stave casks, which gives you a higher volume or more of an oak surface in the casks. And of course the name Blind Seal is kind of a play with the speakeasies in America during Prohibition, because they were kind of called a blind pig or a blind tiger, and then of course the seal because it's a very, very Swedish animal, I would say. So yeah, I'm super excited to try these. And I think I've said what I wanted to highlight. There's of course so many interesting things, and yeah, I can't wait to see what they're going to do. But let's start by trying the house malt one. Let's have a look on the nose. Quite clean, quite tropical at first, kind of meat. Some pear, definitely that kind of piggelin, which is that pear ice lolly, like pear candy notes. Pear banana, so quite estery, I would say, quite fruity. Yeah, that artificial foam banana notes. Quite clean and crisp. Fruity and a little bit sweet. A little bit of a clean oakiness. A little bit of a colder oakiness, I'd probably say. And a little bit perfumed, but not at all vegetal. Well, let's have a little taste. Skål! Still quite fruity. Has a little bit of tannins, and the tannins are slightly vegetal, but it doesn't... What did I say this was? 18 months. It's very smooth and very non-vegetal for 18 months. I'm guessing, I of course don't know this, but I'm guessing their spirits used for this is made to be quite fruity, and it's has a bit of a spice and a tannin note that is lingering on my palate at the moment, but it doesn't feel young. Maybe the edges, just the edges of the tannins, but yeah. A wonderful mouthfeel. It's very kind of like a cloud. A bit like, it's very kind of gentle and just kind of flows. Yeah, it's very pleasant. Still has those kind of, I would say, more pear notes on the palate than banana. Still a bit of artificial banana on the nose. It's interesting because this is, both this one and the peated one are the ones that are kind of what they're trying out to maybe be their house style in the future. And I think they're a mix of bourbon, virgin oak, sherry and chestnut wood maturation, and that they're matured on cask at least 200 litres. So, they've managed to do a really good job in 18 months, I think. Hi guys, I just need to chip in with some information. I filmed this actually a day after I filmed the review for Agitator, which you're watching right now. This is always so confusing, but I got a little bit confused when it came to the malt for their smoky malt and the house malt. And it is what I thought it was, because in the first message Christian told me that it's the same malt for both of these, well, meaning that you use a peated malt. But when I tried the house malt on the first go, I barely got any smoke at all, and I don't know if my palate was just feeling fruity, but after trying it again, I definitely get a bit of an earthiness and a touch of smoke that kind of lifts the other aromas, but the fruitiness is kind of the most dominant thing I'm getting compared to the smoky malt, where you get definitely a smoky style of whiskey. So it's quite fascinating how they can use the same peated malt for both. I think 30 and 40 per ppm on the malt, and through using different cask styles and different mixtures and different kind of distillation ratios, get such different end results when it comes to the smoke. So I just want to clarify that, and now back to my previous me, who hopefully knows what she's talking about for the rest of the video. I am going to retry this one because it is my first dram of the day, so we're going to move on to the rye, which I'm super curious about, and just have a little look on some differences. And let's start by the nose again. Ooh, it's like so much toffee, but toffee meets pine. Yeah, pine, forest and toffee. Like almost like homemade toffee sauce, like cola sauce. Definitely that rye influence in the back, and I think for me the rye character and the pine notes go so well together. The sweetness is a little bit heavier because of the toffee notes. This is a wonderful nose. It's yeah, toffee, pine and that rye element. I know a lot of people call it a rye spice, but it's I don't know, rye is a grain and it's not a spice, but I guess that it's like a spiciness, like I say oak spiciness, so I guess you could describe it that way. But it's like the rye influence. If you smell freshly baked rye bread, it's a little bit like that note mixed with the toffee and the pine. But let's have a taste. Skål! I would never guess this is younger than 3 years. I mean, what have you done with your whiskey? Is this the vacuum distillation? Is this the casks? What? Why? What's going on? It's yeah, it has an aliveness and a vibrancy to it, but it's not. Some whiskeys that are youthful, they are quite sharp. They just need the cask to kind of round out the edges. This is so round. I mean, I'm in the moment and I'm feeling feelings, and at this time of month I am a little bit more emotional than I would be the remaining 3 weeks, but this is one of the best rye flavours I've ever tried. like a warming rye spice. It has that toffee note coming through, which mixes, but it doesn't take over and it's not overly sweet, but it mixes really well with the rye, and I think that kind of piney woodiness goes really well with the rye. And I wish I could send this through. It's quite gentle, but it does have a spice to it, like almost a cinnamon or clove spice, but it doesn't make my mouth feel dry at all. It's just kind of like in the oakiness, and it's just lifting it a little bit. Quite gentle though. I could sip this. And I mean, I think what they're looking to do is create a rye that can be drunk in a Glencairn like this, just neat, or also of course be used in an old fashioned. And what have you done? Please tell me, because I'm fascinated. Okay, we'll leave that one for now and I'll retry them in a second. But we also have two other samples, and one of them is this one here. That is a rökmalt, so it's a peated malt. It is from a mixture of cask types. It's from a mixture of the stills. It says a 46% and distilled in 2018, and it's 18 months old and much lighter in color, as you can see. The last one we are going to move on to try after. Oops. It's a spirit type that is peated to 40 ppm. It says 50% ABV and it's from chestnut. It's 19 months and yeah, virgin chestnut I think as well. Ny castagne, and it's going to be very interesting to try. I don't know if I said, but the blind seal sits at 53 as well. But let's try the peated style. This makes me think of Isla straight away, because it has this briny but clean. So it's not like dark and oily, it's more light, quite briny and quite sea breezy. Almost makes me think a bit of Ardbeg, which is a good sign. But lighter, I would say. There's like a bonfire on a beach smoke. Quite clean. There's like an easygoing beach bonfire that makes me think of these like quite light sea breezes. But let's have a try. Skål! And definitely a peated style. You get a lot of those lovely flavours that are fairly gentle because it's not very spicy, but it's, yeah, that light brininess, beach bonfire notes. It's dry, like a springtime bonfire on a beach, because it has a bit of warmth to it, but it's not like summer. Definitely has a sweetness and like almost a fudginess to it. So it's almost like springtime beach bonfire meets fudgy dessert. Still very gentle. I am not sure I could ever guess the age of these, and I don't think it's because I have this, like, my approach to whiskey is that I appreciate whiskey for what it is and what style it is, what age it is. You can appreciate all whiskey in that way, or at least I can, and I want to. But this, it doesn't have the youthfulness that I was expecting, which intrigues me a lot. And yeah. Let's try the last sample and we'll have a little retaste of them all. And this is the chestnut one. I mean, if the previous one was springtime smoke, this one is autumn. what is that? It's a sweetness, and the scent almost reminds me of something you might recognize from a light sherry influence. It's almost like autumn leaves meets fruitiness. Like cherries, a cherry fruitiness, because you know how there's different textures in fruits. Cherries, I had some the other day, which is maybe why I'm thinking of them, because cherries have this kind of texture of fruit, which is the same with kind of grapes, that it's quite juicy and it's quite, like the water content's quite high. So when you chew it, you do get flavor, but it's not like this in-your-face flavor, usually, unless you have like super ripe and sun-ripe ones. But I'm thinking this kind of, it's almost like a watered-down flavor, but not in a bad way, if you understand what I mean. It's not like banana has a texture that almost clings to your palate and makes the flavor quite intense sometimes. But cherries and like grapes and, yeah, like sometimes with citrus fruit, if you don't eat the thing around it. I never know how to describe my citrus fruits. I know the pith now, but like the skin of it, if you don't eat that, it's also still quite watery. And that's the kind of watery cherries that it makes me think of. But also vanilla fudge, definitely. Let's have a taste. Sláinte or skål. Ooh, spicy. This one has a drying sensation. It's that kind of cinnamon influence mixing with the vanilla fudge. A little bit of that cherry fruitiness, because it's still quite mouth-watering. I mean, it's yummy. Very yummy. It definitely reminds me of European oak, and it's that kind of perfumed, rich European oak. I'm not that used to chestnuts, so I don't entirely know exactly what flavors you get from it, which makes me even more fascinated, because I mean, I'll take any opportunity to learn new things and more about certain things, so this really intrigues me. But yeah, quite perfumed, quite sweet, quite dense, definitely fruity. I get a slight earthiness, but not a lot of smoke on the nose. There's like this slight whiff of smoke, which is more, you know how when I spoke about the Balvenie week of peat, I spoke about a Valborg fire, which is like kind of springtime fire when you scare away the witches and everything evil and kind of celebrate that you're in spring. And it's, yeah, a little bit of that touch of smoke, but it's not overly smoky. Probably because it's really rich oak influence, it's giving you a lot of other things. It's definitely the one that feels the most like a cask sample on the flavor, even though I think, yeah, so yeah, this one's 50 and the rye was at 53, but this one feels stronger in a way, or maybe more robust. Definitely fudgy, almost like, now the smoke is coming out a bit more, it's like smoky toffee fudge, vanilla fudge. It's some sort of, almost makes me think of like Christmas candy when you have like lots of spices in it. Almost like gingerbread though. Also, it's probably the one that has the most sharpness to it. But still not a lot of youthfulness. Let's go back and try some other things again and just give it a little bit of a summary. So this is the house malt, the first one we tried. Definitely still very fruity and that kind of banana pear character. If I had to give it a colour, probably like pastel light green. Fruity and light, it's lovely finish as well. The fruitiness kind of lingers on the finish. Now this is also a mixture of the spirit type. And Christian mentioned that they have a mixture of both. A Malta is both 30 ppm and 40 ppm, but it's to get different characters if they've been distilled in the low reflux stills or the high reflux stills. And this one definitely is just fruity and not a lot of kind of smoky character at all. Slightly earthy. Yeah, nice, smooth. I don't know what to say. It's, yeah, very promising. I just want to drink more. And of course there's different characters for them. So there's HR and LR, which I believe stands for high reflux and low reflux stills. And now we're back to trying the rye. It's just so sweet and toffee-like, and that pine woodiness mixes with the rye flavour, or rye aroma, I guess, since it's on the nose. A little bit perfumed. It's yeah, I like it. I mean, there's a definite rye character that comes through, but it's quite gentle and mixes so well with the other flavours. It's kind of really well balanced, and there is an oak spice, but it's not overpowering. I think sometimes when I try American ryes, there's a big oakiness and lots of tannins and like kind of drying wood, which I guess could be the climate. I mean, Sweden isn't that hot all year round, so maybe for my personal taste, a cold climate rye might be more up my street. I of course don't know if that's the case, but it's a very fascinating one. And I mean, these samples were gifted, and I'm so grateful I get to try them, because I mean, they're not even out on the market yet, but I wouldn't say something unless I thought so. So I hope that my reviews, even though I'm getting gifted samples and bottles, that you don't feel like I'm trying to trick you into anything. I'm just gonna tell you my opinion, and yeah, I hope, because this is my reaction. This is the first time I'm trying them, so I am just gonna say what I feel in the moment, and I hope that gets through the camera as well. Fingers crossed. Or I'm holding my thumbs. Jag håller tummarna, as we say in Sweden. And this is the peated one again, the smoky malt. Yeah, still that, it reminds me of an Isla character, but I guess most people would think of Isla as soon as they get smoke. There's a lighter smoke, and there is definitely something underneath. Like almost like a little bit of a flowery note, but it's not overly floral. It's not soapy or perfumey. It's just springtimey. Even feels lighter and more easygoing on the palate. I mean, there is the smoke there, definitely, but it's easy to approach, I would say. It's not super robust or heavy. It's quite light, which is why probably it makes me think of a springtime smoke, but it's still that kind of beach bonfire. And it does have a flavour that reminds me of an Ardbeg if the Ardbeg was lighter. And of course our last one, the chestnut, which is also peated. I'm getting more smoke now. I think initially I was quite overwhelmed with the cask influence. It's still there and intrigues me, but I think as soon as you find the smoke, it kind of appears to you more. I really want to try more chestnut influenced whiskey, so if you know of any, please put them in the comments below. I need to learn what characters you get from chestnut. But also stunning noses. This is probably the biggest one, the more robust one, because it has another denseness, even though the previous one is more clearly peated. And judging by the colour, I'm guessing it has a cask influence that isn't as active as this one. So I think it feels more peated, but this one, the peat and the denseness of the oak characters go really well together. And this was of course from the low reflux still, so you get a heavier, denser spirit. I will, and I promise I will do the whiskey production video soon. I know some of you already know about whiskey production and know what reflux is, and some of you don't, but basically if you have a high reflux, you get a lot of your spirit kind of swirling around, and you get a lot of lighter aromas coming out, and if you have low reflux, you get more of those kind of heavier, oilier aromas coming out. And I'll explain that in a video later on. I promise. I've said it, I'm going to do it for a bit. I know I just haven't, because it's just such an extensive category. I just need to decide what to say and what to not say and kind of structure it somehow. But yeah, we're going to try this. Definitely the spiciest one and the densest one, and the most autumny one. It's quite oaky, or not. It's not very oaky. I guess it's chestnutty, this one, but woody. That's probably the best word. Woody, but in a really good way. Like if you've been to a distillery and you've tried a cask sample, you get this lovely woodiness that feels very alive and very alive, I think is the best way to describe it. And that's what that reminds me of. Very impressed. They don't feel young. They're only about 18, 19 months, but yeah, I wish you could all try it, of course, and I hope you will as soon as they're out, and I'll be so intrigued to see what they're doing in the future. And of course, once more, a massive thank you that I got to try these samples. They've been very fascinating and of course yummy. So I will definitely enjoy these and share them with Cody, of course, so he gets to try them as well. But of course, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, feel free to leave a thumbs up and perhaps subscribe if you haven't already. And if you like what I'm doing here on YouTube and my other social channels, I'd be absolutely over the moon if you consider using my affiliate links with either Master Malt, the Whisky Exchange, or the Scottish Malt Whisky Society the next time you're shopping with them. All that information is of course in the description here below, as well as links to my website, my Teespring shop, my Instagram and my Patreon if you're curious about that. Of course, a massive thank you to my wonderful supporters on Patreon. You guys are amazing and I appreciate your support so incredibly much. Men jag hoppas såklart ni har haft en riktigt härlig dag. Sláinte Skål!